Premier Doug Ford said today a tough new set of rules for Ontario schools will help students learn. So beginning in the fall, there will be no cell phone use allowed during class time and a total ban on vaping devices.
Now we have team coverage on all of this for you tonight. Our Colin DeMello is standing by with details on the vaping measure. But first, let's go to Karen Lieberman with a look at the new rules for kids with cell phones when they return to class in September. Karen, mixed feelings on this one.
Yeah, Tracy, many differing opinions on it. You know, while everyone I spoke with today agrees the classroom is, of course, for learning, not everyone feels that cell phones should be banned because of the times we're in.
It's out of sight, out of mind for students' cell phones come September. The province introducing a policy it says will get kids back to the basics.
It's not that complicated. Don't use the phones.
Here's how the ban works. Students up to grade 6 will have to put away cell phones and keep them on silent mode in school. Those in grade 7 to 12 may not use cell phones during class time, but can access them between classes and at lunch.
I think banning them from school in a way is a good idea. But at the same time, I like the idea of them having them in case of emergencies.
If kids don't comply with the new rules, they will need to surrender their phones. Repeat violations can lead to suspension.
People, they can't drop the phones. So, like smoking, like drinking, I think it's up there.
One of the things that we know is our responsibility in responsible provision of public education is to train our students on how to use these devices in an appropriate and acceptable way.
Boards will also be required to block access to social media platforms on school networks. This comes as 4 Ontario school boards launch lawsuits against those platforms, claiming their products negligently interfere with student learning.
Kids are rolling out of bed and getting on TikTok. We know that once they leave school property, they're getting on TikTok and they're spending hours and hours on their phones. That's behavior that is impacting the development of their brains.
I think that the ban is a good idea. Enforcing it will be an entirely other matter. They're trying to reverse what's become a cultural norm.
With potentially fewer bodies to do it and a list of other priorities.
Daily staff shortage is a huge problem, making sure all kids have the teachers that they should have in their classes. We're also looking at, a generation of kids who seem to be struggling with their mental health much more than others.
In 2019, a similar ban was introduced, but at the time, the onus was on the school boards to enforce it. At the time, cell phones were allowed in classrooms, but only for educational reasons. And now, Anthony, what we're looking at is a one-for-all policy. So all school boards across the province will have to apply and enforce it the same way.
All right, Karen, we appreciate that. Thank you so much. And as we mentioned, a ban on vaping devices from schools and school-related settings is also coming this fall. Let's go live to Colin DeMello with the details and some controversy surrounding a method to crack down on that. Hello, Colin.
Well, vapes have already been banned inside all Ontario high schools, but the Education Minister says the enforcement was inconsistent. A lot of students, as an example, have been huddling inside student bathrooms, sometimes in one individual stall, just to service their nicotine addiction. The Education Minister says now they are updating the provincial code of conduct for all Ontario schools so that there's a uniform approach to how vapes are treated and the banning mechanisms and the enforcement mechanisms that come along with that as well. For example, the Education Minister says if a student is caught vaping, that vape is going to be taken away permanently and the parent will be contacted as well. There will be other measures as well that the Education Minister says will only escalate from there.
It's also about enforcement with a clear policy that we need kids through an ongoing effort of education and learning to come on side, and if they don't, there can be consequences for those. So there are progressive discipline policies listed in this. It can include up to suspension if there is repeat violations.
Some school boards, like the Peel District School Board, have already implemented some vape detection devices in some of their schools. Coming up at 6 o'clock, though, we're going to tell you the other part of that vape detection device that's raising some concerns, especially with some privacy experts. At 6 public high schools in Mississauga and Brampton, students have been put on notice. Outside the washrooms is a warning for teenagers that vaping is now being monitored by the principal's office, a problem even other students have been complaining about.
And what students are telling me is that, like a group of students, maybe 3 or 4 at a time, would go into the bathroom and they will go in and they will crowd in. They will either, all of them will go in a little corner, or they will even go into the larger stall to do this, right?
But the devices at the Peel School Board go beyond just detection. They also capture noise in the washroom. Parents were notified that student washrooms have noise detection embedded in the vapor recognition devices, leading to serious privacy questions.
The problem with these kind of technologies is they start at this place and then they expand often dramatically over time. That could also expand to eventually picking up conversations that kids are having in restrooms. And that, I think, would be a true violation of privacy.
Some vape detectors on the market come equipped with noise recognition. They can distinguish between a gunshot and even calls for help. In a statement to Global News, the school board insisted their devices only detect loud noises in order to alert administration, but they do not record student conversations.
If you start vaping, it goes off, and it doesn't have any way of staff or anyone, even the company itself, to detect whether somebody even talking on their cell phone or doing anything. It's none of that.
Now there are larger concerns after the Ford government announced $30 million to equip even more student washrooms with vape detectors to curb the growing student problem.
And most of them vape for curiosity, enjoyment, and stress relief. I think we can all agree this is deeply concerning. It is unacceptable.
Privacy experts say it's a dangerous precedent to set, especially since the province isn't prescribing which devices schools should buy. The chair of the Peel District School Board tells me that this is just a pilot program that he'll be watching very closely to make sure that those vape detectors are only focusing on students' behavior and not their conversations. Reporting live in Mississauga, I'm Colin DeMello.